Hi guys, let's take a look at the factors that affect profit. Now in order to do so, let's try to answer this simple question. How do I make more profit? So profit is simply our sales less all our costs. And if our sales exceed the costs, we make a profit. So we can say sales less our variable costs, less our fixed costs. So remember, variable cost plus fixed costs will be our total costs and will equal our profit. So now how do we make more profit? So it's important to understand that this profit is made up of these things: sales, variable costs, and fixed costs. We'll see later on why we split it like this according to behavior. But for our profit to change, if we want our profit to change, we need to change something. Some of these variables, or one of them at least, will have to change. So how I'd like to think of this is, so let's start with sales. How can we change sales to make more profit? Obviously we need more of it. So if sales goes up, we have more to cover our costs and there will be more left as a profit. But what is sales? How do we make sales more? So sales is made up of the number of units. So what do we call that? That's our activity level or volume. So we've got number of units multiplied by selling price per unit. That is our sales value. So let's look at the detail there. So number of units. How can we change the number of units to make more profit? We can sell more units at the same selling price. So that will increase our sales, which will in turn increase our profit. Or we can keep the number of units the same, but then we have to increase our selling price per unit. So we have to charge more per unit. That would also increase our sales, which will increase our profit. So that's how we can change sales in order to increase our profit. If we go down then, so variable costs, how can we change the variable costs in order to increase our profit? So what is variable costs made up of? It's again made up of number of units or volume multiplied by variable cost per unit. So number of units, we can, if we change that, so this is a bit of a tricky one. So if we reduce the number of units, yes, we will pay less for variable costs, but our sales will also come down and hopefully we'll charge more per unit than what we pay per unit. So changing the number of units or reducing the number of units is probably not a good way to increase our profit, but we can reduce our variable cost per unit. So if we maybe for instance buy from a cheaper supplier or slightly a lower quality of input, so that would decrease our variable cost per unit, and that would also then increase our profit. Then our fixed costs. So fixed costs is not related to the number of units. So changing the volume or activity level will not change our fixed costs. So the only way that we can manipulate the fixed cost to change profit or to increase profit is to reduce fixed costs. So if you look at all the variables that make up profit, we have volume that affects our sales value and our total variable costs. We have selling price per unit, so how much we charge for each unit. Then we have variable cost per unit, so those are the costs that change in direct proportion to the number of units. And then lastly we have fixed costs. So these are the four variables that make up our profit. And changing any one of these four variables will have an effect on the profit or will change our profit. And then another way to just write out our profit calculation, here we have sort of an income statement format. So we can also write it algebraically in a formula here at the bottom. So profit equals our total sales, which we now know is the number of units times selling price per unit. So that's sales, less total variable costs, so variable costs, and that is made up of number of units multiplied by variable cost per unit. And then lastly, we have to deduct our fixed costs, and the result will be our profit. So change in any of these variables will result in a change in our profit. And that's what we'll be looking at in cost volume profit analysis.